What's going on, people? No better way than better ways. Back at it again. This time, I wanted to talk to you about something I've barely touched over in my last video. I spoke about it at the end. I wanted to talk about something that has been very, very beneficial to me on this practice, and it's the idea of having a scientist mindset with your life. This idea of confronting everything that's going on within and around you as feedback, as an experiment, as something to build from and learn from. And you kind of do two different things when you have this mentality, when you have this way of approaching life. First of all, you build a fair amount of both resilience and detachment. And what I mean by that is that every time you have a social interaction, for instance, I used to be quite socially anxious before I hopped onto this practice. I was never originally someone that, would just be very closed off and everything. I've always been very fond of connection and talking to people and learning about and from them. But in the part of my life where I've struggled the most with it, and I've had to deal with my fair share of disappointment from people and from myself. I probably tended to lean more on the closed off side. I would just keep it to myself, keep it pushing, and there's still an element of that to my character. But I'm a much more open person now. I'm a much more like how I used to be when I was a child, or I could think back 10 years ago. I would be actively seeking for interaction, although I would do it for validation most of the time. But now, having seen both sides of it, the very being too friendly and being too closed off, I was able to kind of find some type of balance in my approach to life and social interaction through this practice, through this confidence basically that you're building when you're talking to people, because it's you realize it's really not that big of a deal. Talking to people, it's really not as significant as we might think. Shout out to, I think his name is Odie Anthony. I was watching his video yesterday, and I'll probably link it in the description of this guy. Just goes into Hyde Park in London and he randomly starts conversations with people, and that's how it's meant to be. That's how we as human beings are supposed to function with one another. We're supposed to. Now, I'm not saying everybody has to get along, but I'm just saying starting conversations shouldn't be that big of a deal to anyone in a functional and ideal society. And it's I'm not saying you can't be shy, or I'm not saying you should feel like you could bother people when they're visibly trying to stay on their lonesome. But it's if you go to talk to someone and they're not receptive, they're not interested in learning about you, big fucking deal. At the end of the day, it's just the conversation didn't happen, the interaction happened, but you realize you can link this as well to kind of rejection theory, where instead of being afraid of being rejected, you're running towards the rejection. I'm not saying to do things in order to get rejected, but it's if rejection is the main reason you're not doing it, then do it and try to get as close to it as possible with as many increments as you need, because you might just build up You can start with asking if you're really the type of person who can't bear to even ask for the time or ask for directions. Just get comfortable with the idea. Try to get comfortable with the idea that people might not find you that interesting when you talk. People might be bored. People have their own, very own thing going on. And it's not going to make much of difference in their day if they don't have this interaction with you. And it's not going to make much of a difference in your day if you don't have this interaction with them. And as you go along and figure that out, you're building along the way the ability to talk to people for no apparent reason. And that is a massive, massive social skill. And you reinforce this confidence, this idea, because it comes from, knowing you getting rid of so much that the practice has allowed you to purge, so you're not dealing with as much shame, as much guilt, which is, I believe, the reason why people don't strike conversation as easily as they used to. Back in the day, I think there's a lot of shame and guilt and expectation and, a lot of weight placed on the outcome. But if you're having conversation casually every day, then the outcome just becomes very easy to detach from, because it's like, if you don't have it, you don't have it. If you have it, and it's an interesting one, you're going to want more of this interaction, so you're going to seek more connection. So you're building. Remember, I think I mentioned it in, I don't know if it was part 1 of or part 2 of the Mindset Helping Me Conquering Lust. What you're actually looking for when you're someone that's dealing with sexual immorality in the form of, these websites and whatnot, you are looking for, your psyche is looking for a substitute to connection, whether it's connection to yourself or connection to others, or connection to something, an endeavor, a project that feels aligned with who you are. But any form of connection, I think, is good to entertain just on the basis of experience, of interest, which is why when you have this scientist mindset, striking conversations and realizing, hey, I'm actually not, because this is something you might think sometimes, I'm actually not as interesting as I thought I was, or people are not as cold, they don't seem as, you're reframing your mind, you're reframing your entire being into becoming someone that's more social. And the beauty of it, the beauty of doing it with, semen retention, you have more of this energy, more of this willingness to go after things in general. So you're just striking conversations with people regardless of their status, regardless of what they're doing as a job, regardless of their financial condition, and you build up this muscle of not feeling less than who you're talking to, regardless of where they are in life. Whether you talk about societal standards or just probably in terms of wisdom, finances, you don't really care as much. And this is thanks to the scientist mindset, because you're basically working off of trial and error. You're running tests. You run the test once, twice, 3 times, 15 times, and you get a positive result. You're gonna start expecting it, and Not to say that you're going to have an expectation every time you talk to someone, but you are going to understand this idea that things follow a very, definite, linear, strict way of happening. This is slowly going to dissolve. You might have the best conversation from people that you might have thought were mean mugging you or completely ignoring you. And it's like, it creates this opening, it creates this necessity almost to want to experiment in other areas of your life. This is what has happened to me, because social anxiety was one of my biggest problems, I would say. I would often feel like I would have to wear some kind of a mask around people. I would kind of feel like I couldn't be fully seen. And it came from a place of, not trusting myself enough to be myself around other people, and not trusting other people to fully receive me. And it's like, when you're able to receive yourself, you don't really need any form of external validation from the world. So when you actually get it, it's a bonus, and you're not attached to it, and you're building detachment, which you're going to be able to take into other areas, like this YouTube thingy, for example. What I'm doing, I'm very detached from it. I hope it works in a sense. Like, I would be very happy if it became a lot more than what it is right now. But what it is right now is already enough of an outlet and enough of an experiment for me to, get involved with and have a lot of interest. I feel like I have a lot of room for progression, for improvement. I'm having fun with it. I'm not filming anything that's kind of too prepared. I'm just like kind of throwing shit at the wall, see what lands, see what sticks. And this practice allows you to do that. This practice gives you the confidence and the energy to do that. So you have to make sure, or you don't, but I would encourage you to make sure that you have this curiosity and this approach to things. And when I mean talking to people, I don't mean just women, because a lot of people are kind of hyper fixated on women and what it gets. And it's like, if you're about becoming attractive, you should let things come to you. You also, like, you have the possibility to take it as, a game and interact if it helps you build this confidence and build this muscle of talking to people. But I tend to observe that this is how people get frustrated, because the way I see it, if you're hyper fixated on talking to women when you're on this practice, I find it hard to believe that you don't have some kind of outcome expectation, because there's so much more to it than that, so much more. And I would even say it comes as a byproduct. It just, people naturally want to be around you, and that includes women. And then you can strike conversation there and then. But if you're always looking to, play the numbers game, which you can do, it's your life, it's your energy, you have the freedom to use it however you want. But I'm just telling you, bro, even the shit you might not consider, even the shit you might deem too absurd to physically manifest or to become tangible, are worth giving a shot. They're worth trying. Like I've seen people do crazy things on the internet recently, and I'm not saying crazy in a bad way. I'm saying crazy as in, bro, this is what human beings are capable of. This is what human beings are capable of when they find the proper resources, whether it be in form of environment, of energy, of social circles. There are a plethora of fucking incredible things to discover and explore in this life. And you've been given almost like the cheat code, the access to all of that. Be a scientist, bro. Go for the unexpected. Don't just, expect the benefits you hear about, because this also makes it more interesting for all of us. This becomes a common pool of experiences. I, for instance, have been very fortunate to use this practice and to learn languages with it, and also kind of talk to the world around me using energy, using alchemy, basically. Something I thought was kind of a concept that is real, is very real, bro. Alchemy, in the sense of using energies, is very, very real and very, very useful. And this is something worth trying. And when you actually have the energy and the attention span available to you to experiment with those things, you gather the feedback, you share it, you create more you create more value, basically, for yourself, for the collective, because people want to try what you've been about. You want to try what other people have been about. And you have access to the experiences. You have access to, how can I say, a perspective of the experience. And this is going to be probably your starting point to bring it into your very own experience. And we feed off of each other because we are trying different things. Some are experimenting with fitness, some are experimenting with art, creation, intuition. We're basically, everyone eats, bro. When we keep this scientist mindset, everybody eats. And yeah, I think it's an interesting and valuable thing to bring forward when you're on this practice. So that's enough of me rambling. So I had to say for the day. Hopefully you took something out of it. And yeah, take care, be well. See you in the next one.